Hey everyone, and welcome. So, have you ever found yourself staring at a super long list of Angular interview questions and you just feel that wave of panic wash over you? Yeah? Well, you are definitely in the right place. Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on the whole process and give you a completely new and honestly much better way to think about it. Look, it's a totally normal feeling. You find these lists with like 100 different questions. They go from really basic definitions all the way up to these complex, senior level architectural problems. And the sheer amount of stuff can feel, well, pretty overwhelming. It makes you feel like you have to memorize an entire textbook just to walk in the door. But here's the big secret, the thing they don't always tell you. It's not about memorizing answers. Not at all. A great Angular interview is really about showing them how you think. So, that's our plan. We're going to frame every single concept as just one part of a bigger architectural blueprint for building an application. Because once you understand the blueprint, the answers just kind of click into place naturally. All right, let's get to it. Let's start building. Every great building starts with a rock-solid foundation. And in the world of Angular, that foundation is made up of a few core building blocks that, really, everything else is built on top of. So, first up, components. Just think of components as the literal bricks, windows, and doors of your app. Each one is its own little self-contained package with a very specific job to do. Like a login form, or a navigation bar, or a user profile card. Each one has its own logic and its own little piece of the screen to manage. Okay, so if components are the individual rooms, then a module, or an ng module, is like the blueprint for an entire floor or a wing of the building. Its job is to group related components and other pieces together into one functional chunk. This is what keeps our app organized and easy to grow. For example, you might have a user profile module that bundles together everything needed for a user's profile page. And hey, a super quick but really important point they love to ask about. We're talking about modern Angular. It's based on TypeScript and built all around this component idea. This is a total rewrite of the original AngularJS. It's crucial to know they are two fundamentally different beasts. So we've got our foundational blocks, and we've organized them into modules, right? But a building with a bunch of isolated rooms isn't super useful. We need to connect them. And in Angular, that means we need to talk about component communication. This is basically the electrical wiring of our application. This right here is one of the most common bread and butter questions you will get. So picture this. You have a user list component, and it needs to pass the specific details of one user down to a smaller user card component. How do we actually wire that up? Well, the data flows down a clean one-way street. The parent component uses these square brackets around a property to send data down into the child. Then, the child component uses what's called the @input decorator, which is really just a special tag that gives that property a superpower to catch that data as it comes in. It's a super clear, explicit way to pass info down the family tree. But what happens when the child needs to talk back to the parent? Let's say the user clicks a delete button inside that user card component. Well, now the child uses the @output decorator along with something called an event emitter to basically create its own custom event. It can then emit a signal, like a flare, up to its parent, who is listening for that exact event using parentheses. So here's the key takeaway. You gotta choose the right tool for the job. @input and @output are absolutely perfect for that direct parent-to-child chatter. But what about components that are far apart in the app, or they're just siblings? For that, you're going to want to use a shared service, which acts more like a central radio tower that any component can tune into. Okay, so our building is framed, it's wired, but it has no power. It needs data. And this is where services come in. Services are the energy grid for our Angular application, connecting us to the outside world like APIs to get the data we need. Think of a service as a dedicated workhorse. Its job is to do one thing, and do it exceptionally well. This is a core architectural idea called separation of concerns. A user service, for example, should only handle user data logic. This is great because it keeps our components clean and simple. They only have to worry about displaying information, not where it came from. Now, when our app asks for data, it doesn't always come back right away, and how Angular handles that is really interesting. It mostly uses something called observables. Now, you might have heard of promises. A promise is like a vending machine. You put your money in, you press the button, and you get one item back. That's it. An observable is more like a sushi conveyor belt. It can deliver multiple items over time, one after another. This stream of data is perfect for things like real-time updates or user input, and you can just step away or unsubscribe at any time. So that brings us to the ultimate practical question, right? Let's put all these pieces together. You've been asked to display a list of users that you have to get from a backend server. What are the actual steps you need to take? And this right here is the absolute best practice. First, inside your service, you ask for Angular's built-in HTTP client. Then you create a method, maybe called getUsers, and you use that client to make a .get call to your API address. Now that call returns an observable. The final step is back in your component, where you call that service method and you subscribe to the observable. That's how you tell it, hey, when the data finally arrives, give it to me. See how the component has no idea how the data was fetched? It just knows it asked the service for it. It's clean. All right, we have our foundation, we've got the wiring, we've hooked up the power grid. Now it's time for the final inspection. This is where we apply all this architectural knowledge to solve the kind of real-world practical problems you're going to get in a coding interview. This is a classic. It's not a trick question, I promise. It's designed to see if you can manage the state of your application in a clean, logical way. Because while that data is being fetched, the user can't just be staring at a blank screen. They need to know something is happening. The architectural answer here is actually really simple and elegant. In your component, you create a state variable, just a simple true-false flag. Let's call it isLoading. Right before you call your service to get the data, you flip that switch to true. Then, as soon as the observable from the service gives you a response, doesn't matter if it's the data or an error, you flip the switch back to false. And in your HTML, you use a special tool called ngF to show the spinner component only when isLoading is true. Simple as that. And see, that's the whole point. By explaining that simple four-step process, you're not just answering the question, you're showing them that you understand state management. You get how asynchronous stuff works, and you care about creating a good user experience. You are showing them you think like an architect who plans for every single state of the application. So the next time you're facing an Angular interview, I want you to change your mindset. This isn't a pop quiz, it's a design session. It's your chance to walk them through your architectural blueprint. Because when you truly understand the core principles of how all these pieces fit together, you can build anything, and you can confidently answer any question they throw at you.